Hi, Randy. Justin here again. Another conversation about United Methodist polity. I want to tell you how much I appreciate the posts that you have been offering and the kind of insights that you've been sharing, and especially really appreciate those of you who have been really engaging your classmates in deeper kinds of conversation. As questions have come up, you have been engaging one another, and it's been really a delightful process to be able to see that unfold. Thanks for being so faithful in that. You know, I mentioned to a number of you as we took a look at some reflections about your postings this week, I mentioned to a number of you that peer learning really is the primary way that clergy extend themselves into lifelong learning sequences. It's really a peer relationship that happens that makes some good things unfold. And so the more you develop peer learning habits, the stronger your ministry will be. It's when we get isolated, when we get left out and alone, and we're out on the fringe and out on the edge, and we're left to our own means, that we tend to fall aside. But when we have a group of people, or when we have relationships with folks, and when we're committed to peer learning and to lifelong conversations, then remarkable things happen. Now, in this last week, we've been talking about the process of ordination and all the details that go along with that, and you've responded with details about what it means to be an elder, a deacon, a local pastor. Certified lay ministry comes into the picture as well. And you recognize the distinctive differences in each one of those categories. Now, each category not only is distinct unto itself and called to a certain purpose and function, but each category also has its own polity that goes with it as well, its own procedures, its own limitations, its own extensions, and each one is significant to the overall ministry of the church. Now, within the United Methodist denomination, we've been making some changes over the last several years, a number of years now. Back in 1996, when deacons shifted from diaconal ministry, which was a lay category, a lay ministry category, and diaconal ministers became deacons. And those who were in diaconal categories had the opportunity to decide whether they wanted to be ordained as deacons or not. And from that point forward, individuals had the opportunity to pursue the deacon role as an ordination category and enter into covenant with the order of deacons, in the same way that the order of elders had been in covenant for a number of years. As I was going through the process, the days were a little different, and so I was ordained as a deacon, as a provisional category, as a probationer category, and then after 2 years of service, I was ordained as an elder. So we had two ordinations that happened for us. Now there's a single ordination for deacon and a single ordination for elder, and they are two separate and independent tracks, but always in covenant with one another. Now, the idea of covenant is important as well, and I mentioned to a number of you in responses, that the issue of covenant becomes the primary ingredient of what it means to be a member in full connection and to be a part of an order, the elders' orders, deacons' orders, fellowship of local pastors. Covenant is essential. Covenant talks about a sacred bond, like a marriage covenant, like a covenant that you would enter into with friends as you entered into an accountability group. A covenant, an intentional commitment that has a response from both sides. A covenant that God made with the people of God. Covenants are essential to our faith journey. And so the covenant that exists within an order, within elders or deacons' orders, is really sacred. It's about brothers and sisters coming together with a common bond, a common connection, to be able to extend mission and ministry into the world by working and serving together, by holding one another accountable, by saying that there are some standards that we're going to live by, and some ingredients of faith that are going to hold us in connection with one another. Now, sometimes covenants get broken and violated, and we all know how painful that can be. We've had personal experience with that. In our own annual conference, the Rocky Mountain Annual Conference, a few years ago, we had a great deal of brokenness in our annual conference, and there were sides that were divided, and there were lines that were drawn, and there was blood on the floor. Nothing was moving forward in a positive way. I was very fortunate to be able to work with a friend of mine who comes at life from kind of an opposite theological position. And we had been at odds with each other. But we came together and we discovered that we actually liked each other. We actually enjoyed each other's company, and we decided that we would build together a covenant. And that covenant then became a covenant that we offered to other clergy members of our annual conference. And at the annual conference session one particular year, Bishop Warner Brown allowed us the opportunity to be able to share the covenant, our covenant process, with the rest of our conference, and we had about 270 clergy who signed the covenant that day, saying we want to be together. We don't want to be separated. We don't want division. We don't want blood on the floor. Even though there are differences, even though there's distinctive, unique differences that are sacred and important to all of us, the key ingredient is that we are together, working for a common goal of accomplishing the ministry of God in the local church and around the world. So I pray that you would find some covenant in your community. I want to share with you a book many of you know. Steve serves under Bishop Sinise, Robert Sinise, Bishop of the Missouri Annual Conference and beyond now. But one of his early books while he was in ministry in Texas before his election and consecration as a bishop, called Ambition in Ministry. It's subtitled Our Spiritual Struggle with Success, Achievement, and Competition. If you want to think about the nature of clergy relationships, if you want to think about some of the dilemmas, problems, difficulties that are very common, that arise very typically, take a look at this book. I would invite you to take a look at it very early in your ongoing ministry so that you can get a good feel for what it means to be someone who avoids this spiritual struggle, which is extraordinarily common to so many individuals who seek to serve the church. There are so many different dynamics that you will read that you will resonate with. So I'd invite you to get a copy, check it out. It's not on the reading list, but it ought to be on your peer learning, lifelong learning strategy for continued growth and improvement. Now, next week we'll be talking about superintendency. And so when we talk about superintendency, we're talking about the episcopal office. We're talking about the office and position and authority of the bishop. And we're thinking about an extension of the bishop's office that we know as the appointive cabinet made up of district superintendents. So the district superintendent is going to be your primary connection to the bishop's office. You might be in a position where you have more access to the bishop than others, but many individuals might not have any access to the bishop other than at large sessions like the annual conference or something of that sort. The district superintendent is your key. And about midweek, I'll be posting a video as we have conversation about the nature of the superintendency, the nature of what it means to be a part of an appointive cabinet, and the nature of the appointment process itself. Itineracy, guaranteed appointment, the process of being appointed to serve at the bishop's pleasure is a key ingredient for us all to be able to consider. So I'll be interviewing my district superintendent, Dr. Melanie Rosé, and we'll have a chance to be able to talk openly about the nature of appointive process. But for now, read closely the appointive process. You don't need to know every detail of the episcopal office details, so you can read some of it casually, but read clearly what it means to be itinerant individuals. If you're seeking elders' orders especially, knowing that you will live under the authority of the bishop. But even for deacons, if you are finding your own employment and then asking the bishop to endorse that appointment, that employment as an appointment, that's a significant thing. So read that very carefully. I'll look forward to interacting with you online. Continue to work together. Continue to pray for one another. continue to lift each other in prayer. You know, you're scattered all over the country, and we're going to have some opportunity to have some conversation about what it means to be people who are living under a process of appointment. So hang in there. Remember that there is a great distinction between laity and clergy. I mentioned for some of you the idea that I'd rather just eliminate the language of laity and clergy, because really clergy are simply ordained laypersons who come out of the baptized ministry. And too often we lay kind of an image on with that language by saying, well, you know, you're just a layperson, or you might hear people describe themselves, I'm just a layperson, I don't really know, I can't really do. Well, that's really not the truth. The truth is that we're all called to ministry through our baptismal vows and commitments to the life of the local church. And the body of Christ functions best when we are all using our gifts for a common purpose. And that common purpose, building up the body of Christ and helping people attain maturity in their faith. Check out Ephesians 4, 11, 12, 13, 14, and take a look at what it means to be the body of Christ. For now, God's blessing be with you. Pray that you will worship well and that you will know the power of God continuing to unfold in your life. Next week, I'll also tell you some about this shelf of books right here, authored by one of my favorite people, one of the great Methodist leaders of all time, Dr. E. Stanley Jones. I'll tell you more about Dr. Jones at a later date. God bless you all. Have a great week together.